When a cocky car dealership manager kicks out an old man in a cowboy hat, he has no idea he's just insulted his new boss, Clint Eastwood. What happens next turns the entire dealership upside down. Watch till the end to see how one lesson in respect changes everything. The midday sun beat down on the glossy cars lined up at Harrison Auto, a mid-sized dealership just outside Los Angeles. The showroom was buzzing with activity as customers browsed, salesmen made their pitches, and mechanics bustled in the garage. Inside his glass-walled office, David Langley, the general manager, surveyed the floor with a keen eye. He was a man in his late 40s, sharp-dressed, with slicked-back hair and a smug sense of authority. He had worked his way up in the dealership world and now ran the place like his personal kingdom. "Sir, there's an old man looking around," a young salesman, Ethan, informed him. "Old man?" David raised an eyebrow. "He looks familiar, but I don't know, he's wearing a cowboy hat and an old jacket." "Not exactly our usual clientele," Ethan said hesitantly. David scoffed. "Probably some retiree looking to test drive cars for fun. Keep an eye on him, but don't waste too much time. We're here to make real sales." Out on the lot, Clint Eastwood walked past the rows of vehicles, his keen eyes assessing each one. He wore a weathered brown jacket, a simple button-up shirt, jeans, and his signature cowboy hat. At 94, his presence was as commanding as ever, lean but strong, with an air of quiet confidence. He wasn't here to waste time. He had business to take care of. Clint had barely stepped into the showroom when David approached him with a forced smile. "Afternoon, sir. Can I help you with something?" Clint looked up at the man, his expression unreadable. "I'm just looking around." David took a quick glance at Clint's worn jacket and boots. "We mostly carry high-end vehicles here. Maybe you'd be interested in something at our used car lot?" Clint's brow furrowed slightly, but he remained calm. "I'll go where I please." David's smile tightened. "Of course, but these vehicles require serious financial commitment. Our clientele usually comes in prepared to make a purchase." Clint chuckled under his breath. "That's so." Ethan, who had been watching from the side, began to recognize the man. His posture stiffened. "Mr. Langley," David waved him off. "Sir, unless you're planning to buy something, I can't have you loitering around." Clint met his gaze. "Loitering?" His voice was quiet but carried a weight that made Ethan's stomach drop. David crossed his arms. "You heard me. If you're not a serious buyer, I'll have to ask you to leave." Clint tilted his head slightly, studying the man. Then, without another word, he turned and walked toward the door. Ethan hesitated before whispering, "Sir, I think you just made a mistake." David smirked. "Doubt it. I know a waste of time when I see one." Later that afternoon, David was reviewing some reports in his office when his desk phone rang. Langley speaking. "David." It was his boss, Richard Coleman, the owner of the dealership chain. His tone was serious. "I just got off the phone with the new majority stakeholder. He's coming in today, and I expect you to treat him with the utmost respect." David sat up straighter. "New majority stakeholder?" "Yes, we sold controlling interest last week. I thought you read the memo." David frowned. He had skimmed the email but hadn't paid much attention. "Who is it?" There was a pause. Then Richard's voice came through, clipped and firm. "Clint Eastwood." David felt the blood drain from his face. His heart pounded as he replayed the encounter in his head. The cowboy hat. The quiet but commanding presence. The way Ethan had tried to warn him. He had kicked out Clint Eastwood, the new owner of the dealership. Panic gripped him. He bolted out of his office, nearly running into Ethan. "Where did he go?" Ethan shook his head. "I don't know, but..." Before he could finish, the front doors swung open, and Clint Eastwood walked back in. This time, the entire showroom fell silent. David rushed forward, putting on his best smile. "Mr. Eastwood, I had no idea." Clint stopped, tilting his head. "No idea what?" David swallowed hard. "That you were, the new owner." Clint studied him, his expression unreadable. "Would that have changed anything?" David stammered. "Well, I would have treated you with more, respect." Clint nodded slowly. "So, you only respect people based on what they own?" David's mouth opened, then closed. Clint turned to Ethan. "You recognized me, didn't you?" Ethan nodded. "Yes, sir. I tried to say something." Clint looked back at David. Good employees notice things. Bad managers ignore them. David fumbled for words. Sir, Clint raised a hand, silencing him. I didn't come here for trouble, but I don't tolerate arrogance. I've run businesses, directed films, and worked with people from all walks of life. And I know one thing for sure. If you don't respect the customer, you don't deserve to be here. David swallowed hard. Clint exhaled, then gestured toward the office. Let's talk. David nodded quickly and followed Clint inside, his fate hanging in the balance. David followed Clint into the office, his palms sweating. He had built his career on authority and confidence, but right now, he felt like a rookie salesman about to lose everything. Clint took a seat in the large leather chair, his chair now, and rested his hands on the desk. His piercing gaze studied David like a man sizing up an opponent in a duel. You run this place? Clint asked, his voice calm but firm. David nodded quickly. Yes, sir. I've been managing Harrison Auto for the last 7 years. Clint leaned back slightly. And in those 7 years, how many people like me have you turned away? David swallowed. I didn't know who you were. Clint raised an eyebrow. You think that makes it better? David's stomach sank. Clint exhaled through his nose and looked around the office. The walls were lined with framed awards and certificates, Salesman of the Year, Top Performing Dealership, Best Customer Experience, all of which now felt like a cruel joke. Tell me something, Clint continued. What do you think this business is about? David cleared his throat. Selling cars, making profits, expanding the brand? Clint nodded slowly. And what happens when you forget about the people? David hesitated. Clint tapped the desk lightly. I built my career on respect. Respect for the craft. Respect for the people I worked with. And respect for the audience. You? You sized me up the second I walked in and decided I wasn't worth your time. David flinched. I made a mistake. Clint let the words hang in the air before finally speaking. Yeah, you did. David shifted in his chair. Mr. Eastwood, I assure you this was just a misunderstanding. I'm more than willing to make it right. Clint studied him for a long moment. And how do you plan to do that? David straightened. I'll personally see to it that every customer, no matter who they are, is treated with the utmost respect. Clint nodded. Good. But there's one problem. David's breath hitched. What's that? You shouldn't have needed me to walk in here to learn that lesson. Silence. David felt his throat go dry. Are you firing me? Clint took a deep breath. I don't fire people on a whim, but I do make sure the right people are in charge. So here's what's going to happen. I'm bringing in a new general manager, someone who understands what customer service really means. David's stomach dropped. Sir, Clint held up a hand. You'll still have a job if you want it, but not as GM. David clenched his jaw, his pride screaming at him to push back. But he also knew that arguing with Clint Eastwood was a battle he wouldn't win. What position? He asked stiffly. Clint's lips twitched slightly, almost amused. Salesman. Back where you started. David's face burned with humiliation. Going from general manager to a regular salesman was a massive demotion. He'd be working under people he used to command. I'll think about it, he mumbled. Clint nodded. Take your time. But remember, ego has no place in business. The next morning, the dealership was abuzz with whispers and speculation. News had spread fast. Clint Eastwood was now the owner, and David Langley was no longer the GM. Ethan, the young salesman who had recognized Clint from the start, stood nervously by the showroom entrance. When Clint arrived, Ethan stepped forward. Mr. Eastwood, I just wanted to say... Clint gave him a small nod. I know. You saw what your boss didn't. That says a lot. Ethan swallowed. I love this job. I want to do things the right way. Clint smiled slightly. Then keep doing what you're doing. Ethan grinned. Yes, sir. Just then, the dealership doors swung open and a man in his early 50s walked in. Mark Reynolds, the new general manager Clint had brought in. He had decades of experience in the industry and a reputation for treating customers like family. As Clint introduced Mark to the staff, David stood at the edge of the room, arms crossed. He was still debating whether to stay or walk away. Then Clint turned to him. Made your decision yet? David hesitated. He could leave, sure, but where would he go? His reputation had taken a hit. If he walked away now, he'd be admitting defeat. Finally, he nodded. I'll stay. Clint's eyes held a hint of approval. Good. Then let's see if you can earn back the respect you lost. Over the next few months, the dealership transformed under Clint's leadership. Customer service became the top priority. The arrogant, high-pressure sales tactics disappeared. Employees were trained to focus on relationships, not just numbers. And David? He struggled at first. Taking orders from the new GM was humbling, but over time he started to see things differently. He learned to listen, to be patient, to treat every customer with the same level of respect, no matter how they looked when they walked in. One day, Clint stopped by the lot while David was helping an elderly woman pick out a car. He watched as David patiently walked her through the options, treating her like she was the most important person in the world. After she left, Clint approached him. That was good work. David exhaled. Thanks. Clint studied him for a moment, then nodded. Keep it up. David realized then that respect wasn't just about power. It was about how you treated people, even when no one was watching. And for the first time in years, he felt proud of the job he was doing. Months later, the dealership had become one of the top-rated in the state, not just for sales, but for customer satisfaction. The name Harrison Auto was now synonymous with integrity and quality service. One afternoon, Clint sat in his office, looking over reports. Ethan walked in, holding a framed certificate. We just got this, he said with a grin. Clint took the frame and read it. Customer Choice Award, Best Dealership of the Year. He nodded approvingly. Not bad, Ethan chuckled. Not bad? It's the first time this place has won something like this, Clint smirked. Then I guess we're doing something right? As he placed the award on the wall, he glanced outside, watching as David helped another customer. Some lessons took time, but when learned the right way, they could change everything. And with that, Clint Eastwood leaned back in his chair, satisfied. This dealership was finally in good hands. Enjoyed the story? Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Tailcraft, for more captivating stories.